Well, it had to happen at some point. Good evening, good morrow, and good day, and welcome to another campaign diary and Q&A here on Slice and Dice. Been a little while since we've had a problem with mic muting, but there we go. Thank you, RS Tornado, for pointing that out, and we got that fixed straight away. Nice and easy fix. So basically, today I'm not only covering the sessions, the last few sessions, so sessions 52 up to 55, our Halloween special, which was on Monday, but also kind of giving you a bit more of an insight into not only DMing a long-term campaign, but also more so even into when you're DMing a homebrew campaign, a campaign that you've designed, that you've come up with from scratch, that the adventures and everything else that you put into it all comes from you. There's a weight of responsibility. There's a lot of your time and energy and a lot of yourself that you have to sink in, a lot more so than I would say with a pre-written adventure, where you've kind of got that level of isolation, that level of separation, because you've got that intermediary who's written the adventure, and then you're kind of putting it into your world, which takes some of the weight off of you, takes some of the pressure off of you. But equally, you might not get as much reward from it. You don't get as much, I guess, you can't claim as much credit, I guess, when it does work. And like on the one hand, when I've been running this game, there have been some fantastic times that I've been at the highest highs of when you've put something together, it's paid off, and the players kind of turn to you and go, like, that was great, that was awesome, thank you so much. Like that's what makes it all worthwhile, knowing that what you've put your time into actually was enjoyable and has been paid off, has paid off. And there are other times, however, and it only happens sometimes, only happens occasionally. I wouldn't say it happens all the time by any stretch. And if it does happen a lot in your game, then it's something you probably need to think about and maybe either do some soul searching, or maybe in the first instance talk to your players about it. Because if you are finding that your players aren't enjoying your game, if they're complaining about the game more than they are seemingly enjoying it, then there's something not quite right there. Is it that they aren't enjoying it, or is it that they're not communicating to you when they are enjoying it, and so it's appearing to you that all you're getting is complaints? I think communication is a fundamental part of this game. You need to have that communication with your players and vice versa. But there are going to be times when you disagree, and there are going to be times where, especially when you've created it from scratch, you've not just put the seed in the ground, you've created the ground to put the seed in. There are going to be times where what you've come up with, wasn't quite right, or maybe just needs a bit of fine-tuning, needs a bit of tweaking, and whatever. That's part of the creative process. It goes with the territory. You can't have number one hits every time. There's got to be those album tracks that serve a purpose, but they may not be shining beacons every session. You can't have that. It's impossible. But what you can have is it's kind of a pacing thing. You can make sure that you have these really significant moments, but also having those moments where there's a bit of downtime, maybe it's a bit more focused on not necessarily important stuff to the campaign. Hi, Valexion, thanks for getting in touch. You've written in with a question. What's your opinion on a character heavily focused on luck? Say a halfling, divination wizard, divine soul sorcerer, fiend, warlock with the lucky feet. Wow, that's a multi-class. That's a big multi-class. So what's my opinion on a character heavily focused on luck? I think I think if you want to create a character focused on luck, why shouldn't you? Go for it. There's nothing wrong with a theme like that. And especially in a role-playing, in a dice-rolling game, luck is a very important part of it. I guess you could almost argue, exactly as RS Tornado says, isn't all the luck based on dice? I guess the thing with what you've proposed there with a luck-focused character is actually, it's not so much... I guess the issue with a halfling, divination, wizard, divine soul sorcerer, fiend, warlock with the lucky feat is that actually, so it's making your character more lucky. It's kind of, but it's almost taking it away from luck and kind of stacking the odds in your favor. Now, again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Having a character that's extremely lucky, it could be quite a fun theme for your character, and could be quite fun to play. And I think it's going to be especially devastating when those things don't work, and particularly from what you're talking about there, that's a multi-class that's going to have to be a pretty high level to be able to multi-class into all of those. So it's going to be nice if you're starting from lower levels to have that build up through the campaign of them, trying and failing, but but then over time getting more and more lucky, and they seem to, they take the feat, and more stuff seems to be going their way. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If your DM's up for it, by all means, go for it. I have a house rule at this table. When it comes to multiclassing, I won't let my players multiclass into 2 different spellcasting classes. I think that just gets a bit messy for me personally, and it can be quite easy to lose track when you start multiclassing that way on what's my spell DC for this, what's my spell DC for that. And it just, so for me, I just think let's simplify it and not have that in there. But it's up to your DM as to whether they want to do that or not. In this campaign, however, we do have a character with the lucky feat, Fleeting Look. And despite having the lucky feat, that didn't stop him from, unfortunately, meeting an early demise in the Halloween special. Now, that's not to say that it's all over for Fleeting Look. His life does hang in the balance, and the party do have the Revivify spell and a diamond. It's just it's a case of, have they got to him in time, because you have to do it within a minute of that PC dying. You have to do the spell. So it was on the cusp. So we haven't revealed yet what his fate is. That will be revealed next time. So I hope that answers your question, Velixion, but let me know either way. Luck, a fundamental part of the game, in summary. So if you want to play a character that's based on focused on luck, why not? It's a luck-based game anyway, so it goes with the territory. So anyway, in the last few sessions, it has kind of been punctuated in that way. We've had skirmishes, we've had combats as our characters continue en route, and this party in particular, they're quite. When it comes to combat, they're pretty solid. They've got some solid tactics. That some of them are really quite built for DPS, and so they can excel in combat. But as with most things, it's more a question of erosion, really, over time, because they're great in the first fight, but then the second fight comes, and then the third fight comes, and you're slowly depleting your resources, and things can go a bit awry. And eventually, that's kind of what happened in the most recent session. But we'll get to that. So in session 52, called Sky Dancers, our group was set upon again by manticores. This time accompanied by more Aarakocra monks. This time, these monks were. Some of them were sky dancers, which are kind of the swordsmen, the sword dancers of the Aarakocra monastery, the Eyrie, and so a bit higher ranked than the monks that had come after them before with the manticores. The party figured out, however, that once they had slayed the manticores, the Aarakocra would fall into line, because they're really the Aarakocra are slaves to the manticores, who have did a coup d'etat to take over the Eyrie from them and kind of enslaved the population. So once the manticores were taken care of, the sky dancers were more than happy to lay down their arms, surrender to the group, and then head on their way. And they've kind of become a little resistance force for the party. They've agreed to head back and tell them the manticores are causing trouble in the village, but were sent back. And they can be then people on the inside when the party arrive at the Eyrie to try and liberate it. That's the overall plan. Now, we had a bit of not a crisis, we had a bit of a balancing thing, because then in session 53, finally, after 2 months away from the campaign, we then had our player Marta rejoining with her character Neris, and so it was suddenly like, how do we get her back into the game? And now I think, to criticize myself, I probably should have talked to her a bit more about that and asked, why would Neris go back to the party? Because she's in Hilberg, they've gone off traveling. Why would she then go and catch up? But instead, I kind of assumed, oh no, I know why she would go and follow the party. Here are some reasons, and basically gave those reasons to her in the form of a group of bounty hunters that were on the trail of Seth, who's the rogue of the group, who in the very first session escaped from a prison wagon. So he's going to have a bounty on his head. He is literally a fugitive. He was arrested in the first place because of piracy, acts of piracy, supposedly, and he is actually a pirate, so that would make sense. And so with her getting wind of these bounty hunters in in the town of Hilberg, it then seemed like she should probably go and warn the party they're coming, but instead that didn't convince Neris, and that surprised me at first. But then actually, on reflection, she isn't that attached to the party so far. They have saved her life, so she's attached to them in some senses, but I think she is more loyal to her family than that. And her uncle Brynlan, after their aunt had been tragically killed, she was sorry, I lost my trail of thought there. With Valexion, just had another question, just stumped me there. Digital or physical for the Rogue? How many DVDs, or was it gold? Yes, very good, very good. No, he was a swashbuckling pirate, I'm afraid. So Neris, she's more about the family, and after her aunt Argentia died, she recognised that her uncle Brynlan needed some time to grieve and probably needed some help at his carpentry shop, and so she was kind of apprenticing him. So she got to learn some carpentry. She's not proficient yet with carpenter's tools. That's going to take some time, but she's started her training, and also she's then been able to keep an eye on the two werewolves, because there is that other plot hook that's kind of been, not plot hook, but there's other plot line that's been kind of put to one side for now because there's not a lot the party can do with it, and that is the two lycanthropic individuals they saved from the banquet and ball at Rackvale Manor all that time ago, where the werewolf plot came to be. They managed to save those two people. However, they have contracted lycanthropy, and so they need to be keeping them away from most of society, just in case they turn. And with the help of the priest Ventrix II, they're hoping he can bless them and perform rituals and so on to try and prevent them from turning while they're there. Unfortunately, in this campaign, it's not just a full moon that makes lycanthropes turn, because if it did, that means that lycanthropes are only a problem once a month, which isn't very fun, in my opinion. Aris Tornado, from a DM teaching a new player, me, during session 0, what should I expect or take notice from the DM? Okay, so pay attention to house rules, because each DM will have their own rules at their table. Everyone plays the game, will run the game slightly differently. Definitely pay attention to that. I would... it depends what they tell you, really, in session 0. I think you can decide pretty early on if you're going to get on with the table or not. If you know them before playing Dungeons and Dragons, then you already have the kind of the sum of their personality, so you'll know if they're going to be a good match for you or not. But some can surprise you. What you ideally want to hear from the DM is kind of a concept, an overall concept of their campaign or their setting, what they've got in mind, and encouragement, really, on your character choice. You want to know that if any DM tells you that your character choice is terrible, then I would question that, because I think in 5th edition particularly, it's quite forgiving. You can be anything you want to be, and I don't think it should be a case of, oh, this won't work, oh, this is broken, this is not going to work for you. It's no. Why shouldn't it? Okay, your character may be suboptimal, but since when do you have to be an optimal build to enjoy the game? I would argue, actually, being suboptimal, playing a suboptimal character, can be a lot more fun than playing an optimal one, unless your focus is entirely on just doing damage to baddies and just hitting them all the time. And to be honest, those aren't the most interesting characters to play, because they just want to hit things all the time. It's like you've not got a personality, not got some stuff going on, not got some character drama you'd like to explore. Lean into the role play if you can. If that's a table that you're at and they're comfortable doing some role play, just go for it. It's so much fun. It brings another level to the game you won't find elsewhere. Valexion says, and brackets unknown to the party, evil werewolf has started trading silver for gold with the intent of holding werewolf weakness while ruining the gold value. Okay, so getting some economics involved in that campaign. Could be interesting. Having maybe is this werewolf also, I don't know, a banker? Perhaps that would be interesting. Hoarding loads of gold, getting rid of all the silver. Invite them around for dinner, and then all of the silver cutlery mysteriously goes missing. Could be interesting. So anyway, back to the campaign. So yeah, Nerys wasn't taking the bait when it came to there are some people after the party. It was only she had other things to attend to. Went to the temple and found that one of the werewolves had been slain, unfortunately, because Captain Mandeville had turned and was about to take chunks out of the priest when his assistant Brian Obadiah got in there, guiding bolt, bam, and unfortunately killed him. Had to be done though, because in the situation, in the heat of the moment, which means that then Nerys has this bad news that now she has to go and tell the party that they've only got one werewolf left, and it also meant that she could join the dots and introduce Ventress II to her uncle Brynlan, because she suggested that one of the reasons these werewolves probably have turned is because there are windows in the temple. Moonlight can get in. They're small windows, but still enough that moonlight will get in. And she has now suggested building like a little kind of lean-to or shack inside the temple, which then can house Greta Grouse, the one remaining lycanthropic individual, so that the moonlight doesn't hit her, so she doesn't have to turn. Hopefully that will work. But also it's nice, kind of gives Brynlan something to do while she's not there, which is a kind of a very neat way of sorting that all out. Can you block out moonlight with light pollution? Again, it's down to your DM. I always find, so lycanthropy is a mystical, unknown, and it shouldn't always conform to reason and science. It's magical in a sense, and it's supposed to be a very old curse. In fact, it is magical. It's a curse. In my campaign, so far I've basically had it as lycanthropy is more potent when the moon is full, and it's less potent when there's less of the moon shining. So far it's been established that if they're underground and moonlight can't touch their skin, then they won't turn. But it's not going to work for material. It's not going to work for clothes, for instance. That's kind of as far as we've explored with that. Because they've moved on to other things in the campaign, so we haven't really dwelt on it too much. All they know is they want to get a potion of remove curse. And potentially they have that at the Eyrie, which they're travelling to now. Would tinted windows affect the transformation progress? Again, this is up to your DM. I would say, in my campaign, no. I'd say no. Any light hitting you would still carry the curse. So. And could potentially turn you. All of these come down to a saving throw anyway from the character. And then the DC is kind of set depending on how intense it would be, the light, depending on the time of the month and so on. So anyway, Nerys decides to spend the night in the temple with the one remaining lycanthrope and the priest, just to make sure that nobody else dies. Sleeps peacefully, and in the morning she then goes back to report to her uncle to propose building a shack, and then finds her uncle has been savagely beaten by these three bounty hunters who apparently came back looking for her, to which he pointed them in the direction of where the party are heading, to try and get them out of town and away from Nerys. Which meant that finally, after her family was beaten and attacked, that sort of, for Nerys, was a red rag to a bull, quite literally, and she took off straight away on her uncle's horse, Louse, on the mare, the black mare, heading out to try and hunt them down before they got to the party. She says, I wanted different types of werewolf based on the light colour in your campaign, like Yoshi's. I mean, that sounds great. That sounds like it could be really good fun. It hasn't happened in this campaign, but I like that thought. I'll keep that in mind for future games, for sure. Use it in yours. Do it. So then Nerys heads off trying to locate the others. So finally we're kind of going to get the party reunited. Meanwhile, the party have been continued on their mission towards the Eyrie, and they've come to a road where they were warned by the elderly lady that had sought out Leobrin, because he was carrying a crystal ball that the party found earlier after slaying the Banderhob. A lot of stuff has happened in this campaign, guys, so this is probably a bit for some of you. But anyway, he's carrying this crystal ball, which he was meant to deliver to this elderly lady. She then found him. It seems that she was mystical. Maybe she's a witch. And she told him that because Leobrin's, as a warlock, he's had some issues with his spellcasting, because it seems that his patron powers seem to be waning, and he can't understand why the Spring Court of the Feywild seems to be losing its magical essence. And so sometimes his spells don't work. This is all kind of done mechanically with dice rolls and things. And this lady has promised basically a fix for that, and if he wishes to have his powers restored properly, that he should seek out the pearl, which is on her caravan, which she noted is on their route. It's on the road towards the Eyrie. Now the group find this, and not only do they find the pearl, they also find 12 pixies, all in tiny little cages. Leobrin, being the do-gooder that he is, then finds the keys and sets free all of the pixies, which it turns out are in fact from the Spring Court. Who'd have thunk it? And also asks them kindly to put in a good word for him with Lady Hedera Crowned Green, the head of the Spring Court, and the mother of his patron, Lady Aranth First Blooming, his baby mama and patron. Complicated relationship there. So it was good progress for him there with that, because it's like, wow, finally I can get a fix for my powers. But at what cost? What cost? Because clearly that lady was not who she said she was originally, a witchy woman. What's going on there? That's one thing that's yet to be explored, but I'm sure it will be in time. So then the rest of the party continue on across the road. They don't, unfortunately, the roads to the path to the Eyrie isn't just straight roads all the way, so they've got to go traverse the mountains, and so they head on their route, and they kind of come to a less fertile ground. It's kind of quite barren, earthy, and kind of with flecks of salt and so on the ground. This is because it was kind of the salt fields on the way to a saline lake, which is where the party then decide to take a stand, with Seth, the rogue, noticing that they're being followed by 3 individuals on horseback. So they decide, let's go see what they want. No metagaming here. Just seems a bit odd that we're being followed. And that kind of led us into session 54 and 55, really. Session 54, these 3 individuals who've been following the party, they want Seth. That's what they're after. They're bounty hunters who have come from Kalas and the pirate city. They have been told that Seth is the person depicted in the wanted posters. Who was a navigator on board the Knight's Teacher, a ship that is actually moored in Kalas. It seems that somebody on board wasn't particularly faithful to Seth and has basically offered this information to the bounty hunters without it being public knowledge. So that they can get to him first, and they'll get 100 gold pieces for their trouble. Now, these really are mercenary types, the 3 of them. There's a rogue with an eye patch and kind of a mop of hair, a dwarf with tribal furs and greenish tinge to his beard, and a human female with a kind of a very pale, scarred skin and a flat top, like dark hair with a flat top, wearing plate armor, who's a kind of paladin, it seems. The 3 of them, quite formidable individuals, but mercenary, and they say to the party, look, you can give us Seth, or you can give us the money. If you give us 100 gold pieces, we'll be on our way. That's fine. That's all we really care about. And for a moment, it looked like the party were going to say, yep, 100 gold pieces, there you go, off you go. Brucon, we noted that Brucon, the dwarf monk, was looking, he's also kind of an ex-party boy, the drunken master, looking in his coin pouch, and noted he had 96 gold pieces, which is very, very close. But he didn't actually offer it, because I think Malar, again being a do-gooder, kind of intervened and said, well, we're not going to negotiate with you here, like, you can leave, we're not giving you Seth. That didn't go down very well. Fortunately, in preparation, Leobrin had cast Plant Growth, which would then really slow the progress of the 3 if they tried to advance on the party, but also had the counter effect that then they also would have trouble getting to those 3 should they choose to. And then as the fight went on, then Neris appearing at the back there, further complicated things, because then she was kind of stuck away from the rest of the party. Because, yes, as you can tell, it didn't go well. They decided, nope, we'll fight you then. And the rogue led off his crossbow, taking shots at Fleeting Look, who was still riding on top of his dire capybara. Lady Kilala, hello! Thanks for tuning in. Yes, so it seemed that Fleeting Look was a bit of a magnet, to be honest, for damage during the encounter. How I had planned it out was the lake was obviously there was something at the lake, and it was teased during the conversation. There were eggs. They found like a nest of eggs there, and then another nest, and some of the eggs were all broken and some of them weren't. Just kind of teased there's life here. And in fact, it was the home of a giant lurking snake, which is kind of based on the giant snake from the Ghosts of Saltmarsh campaign, with my own little twist on it. And then its spawn, which is a swarm of poisonous snakes, again with the same twist to make them the lurking snakes, who then spring out and attack the party. So they're getting attacked on two sides. Now, originally, I hadn't planned for the bounty hunter thing to happen as well. That was meant to be just motivation for Neris, and then suddenly it's like, no, hang on, they're approaching them. It just as it transpired that they were going to be going that way as well. Equally, I had given a few reasons, a few ways for the party not to fight the bounty hunters. They could have paid them. They could have negotiated in some other way, but there was no compelling argument. It was kind of a bit of a standoff, really. And so that happened. Equally, if the bounty hunters got closer, they probably would have had more of an interest in slaying the giant snake and its brood, because they probably would want to take care of that rather than these individuals who could be reasoned with, whereas these monsters probably not. As it transpired, you then had the mercenaries on one side, the snake on the other side with the party, and then Brucon with his boots of speed running across the plant growth much easier than the others because of his extra speed. So then he could then engage with the bounty hunters, and then obviously Neris turning up later on to be on that side as well. Lady Kilala says, "Are you the forever DM when it comes to DMD?" No, I'm not. In fact, lead on to a very good point here, because I think if you ever played D&D before as a player, you should give it a go DMing, just to see what it's like on the other side of the screen. Really give it a go. This is the only campaign. Well, no, this is one of two campaigns. Apologies, that I'm the DM for. I've done some one shots before as well, but to be honest, I often feel I'm a better player than a DM, and that might be because with DMing, I'm creating all this from scratch. I'm probably just my own worst critic in that respect. That I'm just thinking that I'm not good enough, or what have you. And also, I think that to be a DM, you've got to have quite a thick skin, because there are going to be times when your players disagree with you. There's going to be times when the players get frustrated, because not everything can go the player's way every time. Like, they're going to have challenges, and it can be stressful in that respect. Than somebody who likes to be a bit of a people pleaser, it can be really hard when you're not pleasing people, when people aren't happy, but they need to be challenged for the game to be enjoyable and memorable in the long term. Lady Kilala, I'm the forever DM, so I'm happy that I'm actually a player in my current game. Well, good for you. You've actually been able to do both. Being a forever DM, I wouldn't advise it. I think you don't get a full taste of the game by just being the DM or just being a player. You need to do both, so then you can see everything that it has to offer. And I think you get a greater understanding on what's appealing to a player and what would be fun to play as a player when you're DMing. Equally, I find that when I'm DMing, that when I'm creating unique characters that are meant to be important, that or otherwise, that actually using the character creation for being a player is really useful for that. And actually, you can create characters just out of thought, knowing some of the basic abilities of some of the classes. That can be really helpful to you as well. Now, speaking of which, so these three individuals, the mercenaries, I wrote out character sheets for them with information and pictures and everything, and now they're all dead because things, well, I thought it might happen. If it came to a fight, they probably would be a fight to the death, But things took a very dark turn in the campaign. Lady Keylala, I've been playing D&D since 2010, 2011. It's not my choice. It's just my friends love my DMing style, and I'm a storyteller, so I'm okay doing it. Well, if they enjoy you doing it and you enjoy doing it, then win-win, really. But as I said, I think you definitely need to do both at some point. You need to experience both to get a full-rounded experience of the great game that is Dungeons and Dragons. So these 3 characters I created sheets for, they're all now dead. So that was a waste of time. It wasn't a waste of time. It really wasn't, because even if they hadn't have died, I would have had other material to use, and even if they do die, it gave me more of a sense of their characters to play them, but also for where they're coming from, and also the effect that they've had in the world, because they've been part of this world. They have done things. They are like level 7 characters by PC styles. So it's so they were pretty high profile adventuring types. So we had to have a bit of information about them. So we've got now I can reveal to you, because 2 of them didn't even get named before they died, which is a real shame. I can reveal that for you now. I should say, actually, so all 3 of them met a horrible demise, really, kind of befitting, I guess, of mercenaries. They when the battle turned against them, 2 of them went down, the rogue and the paladin. The paladin first. The paladin had a unique magic item, which I created, which is based on Tensor's floating disc, crossed with freezing Han Solo in carbonite, you can imagine, from Star Wars. So it's essentially like a floating disc that you can then get strapped to, that then immobilizes a character, takes them out of essentially takes them out of the combat, and basically is meant to be used for transporting people, transporting bounties, so that you can take them alive but restrained and incapacitated, and then take them and deliver them to where they need to go. So it's a really kind of efficient magic item for that. It's quite a powerful one, but only for that unique purpose. It doesn't not really useful for anything else. And that's called Cadence's Graphite Slate. Cadence is a wizard that has been mentioned not once but twice now, as Seth is also wearing Cadence's magnificent vest, which allows him to cast minor illusion at will. So there's some. So Cadence clearly a wizard of some renown. Will the party meet them? Who knows? We'll find out. But yeah, they met quite a grisly end, the 3, because once the 2 of them went down, the rogue and the paladin, leaving only the dwarf barbarian, who is a bear totem barbarian, which is basically not indestructible, but just resistant to basically everything except psychic damage, which means that they're pretty tanky. And so when it was only the dwarf left, he surrendered. He wanted to keep his friends alive. And while surrendering, Nerys was had been taken out of the equation, which sucks, but it was going to happen with that particular item, which now the party have. Like I said, Cadence's Graphite Slate, being able to summon that disc. Nerys got strapped to it. She was basically taken out of the equation at that point, which then again looked like it was going to tip the scales back into the bounty hunter's favour, but the team prevailed nonetheless. And once she was set free and the dwarf had surrendered, she decided that she was going to light them up instead. So the dwarf, obviously being resistant to the fire damage, then called in his emergency backup, his giant eagle, and as he was there lifting his unconscious, one of which actually was dead, party members, the rogue and the paladin, just lifting them onto the eagle, the Seth comes charging out of nowhere, screaming, "You killed Fleeting!" shooting him with a crossbow, until eventually he dropped down to the floor, and then Nerys brought down the giant eagle as well, before burning all 4 of them to a crisp in the most dark way possible. With both those characters, they've gone towards the darkness. It's a bit disturbing, but it makes total sense for their characters. Obviously, I've talked about Nerys, so we'll go cover her first. Obviously, being her aunt dying by her own hands while she's being manipulated by the red mages, pretty brutal. And then having her uncle savagely beaten by these mercenaries means that there was going to be no mercy from her. Pretty dark. But so you can understand why she did it. I wouldn't say it was the right thing to do. It certainly wasn't the good thing to do, and hence her alignment has now changed to chaotic neutral rather than chaotic good, because, burning unconscious, people who have surrendered, or should I say, slaying people who have surrendered and then burning their bodies is pretty dark. As for Seth, one thing that I haven't actually covered in great detail was obviously the fate of Fleeting Look. When the giant snake appeared from the lake, it was Fleeting and Seth who were right next to the lake, and they were the ones who were attacked by the giant snake. It seems it did take an interest in Brina, the tiny little deep gnome wizard, for a moment, but then as Fleeting and Seth retaliated with attacks of opportunity, it turned its attention back to them, and instead attacked Fleeting Look, got it in its clutches, tried to take a bite out of him, but knocked him unconscious just by constricting him, and then pulled him under the water, which then meant that this character was unconscious and drowning, so they were failing death saves every turn. I think they failed once before Seth dove in to try and save him, slaying the giant snake and then getting to Fleeting to be able to try and swim him out of the water the next turn. However, Seth was followed in by two swarms of snakes which had been attacking and harassing the pair before they went into the water. They followed and attacked, and one swarm took a big old bite out of Fleeting Look, and that's a crit. That's 2 failed death saves, and with that he breathed his last. And so Seth was there with Fleeting in his arms watching him die, which is there are no words. That it's horrific. That was so difficult to process something like that. You would be angry, but was that anger directed in the right direction? I would say 100% no, but I don't play the character, so it was up to James, and in Seth's head it made sense. So he pulled Fleeting Look out of the water before picking up his crossbow and heading towards the bounty hunters, leaving behind the swarms of snakes that had just killed his friend in front of him, leaving the swarms behind and instead directing his rage at these bounty hunters who, for all intents and purposes, hadn't really had anything to do with what was going on with the giant snake, albeit one of them had shot Fleeting Look with a crossbow, the rogue. I don't think, however, that did any damage. But anyway, shouting, "You killed Fleeting," which was debatable, and then directing his rage at them killing them rather than trying to do something about his friend, perhaps going over to Malar knowing that he was the cleric and being able to maybe do something to bring his friend back. None of that. It was just rage, no sadness, just rage. And so Seth and Neris, they both got this chaotic rage going on about them. They're not barbarians. A sorcerer and a rogue who, clearly walking a dark path. Seth, as we know, has also done a deal with a being that's beyond comprehension, the Old One, and so he's multiclassing into Warlock, spoilers. And so we already know that he was morally dark, morally grey, and it's kind of, he's taken another step in that direction. And for me, I'm a little bit worried because I'm like, well, I'm not running an evil campaign, so you guys, there needs to be a line here, and I don't think that, because even evil characters don't think they're evil. They do evil things, but they justify it, right? And I feel like in this case, these characters are very neutral, but they think that everything they're doing is good. And it's like, well, from an outside perspective, this is horrific. What are you doing? Again, you can understand the process, you can understand the emotion totally, but then, like, pragmatically speaking, this is morally not right. What you're doing here, like, this is morally the wrong thing. Maybe it's part of their process. Who knows? But it's going to be interesting to see how that develops going forward. Anyway, so it was a long old slog, but those 3 characters met their demise, and I can now name them for you. The rogue was named Teros the Grifter. He was a swashbuckling rogue, just like Seth, because they're quite annoying. And he grew up in relative squalor in the Crowflies during his early life as a stable hand for House Grifton, hence the nickname the Grifter. He basically eventually managed to get himself out of there, jump ship, literally, onto a ship, and then serve as a pirate, and making his money that way. And that's what led him to a life of bounty hunting. Then we had the dwarf, Egwig of Latrix, hill dwarf, a totem barbarian, who was abandoned in the Latrix forest and was brought up by the Firbolg of the One Nation, that reside in the forest as a child. They taught him the ways of Mother Nature and some of their magical talents. For years, he was a guardian of the forest, avoiding the civilization that dared to attack his home. When the nation decided to coordinate a strike against the woodsmen of House Rookwood, who were responsible for a lot of Latrix's deforestation, Egwig immediately offered to join the strike force. But the Knights of Rookwood were better equipped than anticipated, with many furbolgs slain and Egwig taken prisoner. So he rotted underground in a cell for years before eventually there was a riot and he managed to escape. And then since then he found Teros the Grifter and joined forces with them as a bounty hunter. And as you could see, he was, as I've said, he was very loyal to the three of them. The fact that when the fight was over, he had surrendered. And it was clear that the forces, the goodies weren't going to stop their attacks. But he still grabbed his friends and with his dying breath was putting his unconscious and dead friends onto the giant eagle to try and get them to get to safety at the very least. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way in brutal fashion. But it seems at the end that these guys can't have been out and out evil, because you don't do something like that. You don't show compassion. Compassion doesn't seem to go with evil. They seem to be different things. So anyway, the final character, Last, who is the paladin Oath of Conquest. It was noted that at one point she grew a foot taller and became very hairy. It's actually because she's a beast hide shifter rather than a standard human. So perhaps kind of an allusion, perhaps in some way related to lycanthropes. That's actually one other thing as well. We were talking about lycanthropes earlier. In your campaign, if you want to play a kind of lycanthropic character, rather than playing somebody afflicted with lycanthropy, a werewolf, a were-rat, a were-bear, and so on, have you considered playing a shifter? Because a shifter gives you some of that feeling of being able to transform partially into some kind of animal-human hybrid, but it doesn't come with the drawbacks of I could turn evil here and kill my party members because I have no control over my bloodlust. Whereas beast shifters, they can choose when they turn and they can do it tactically. That's kind of the way that they're related to nature and the world around them. So Last grew up as part of Clan Ice River in Provincia, spending many winters wandering the river, getting in touch with nature and so on. It was during one of these that a blizzard hit and Last was left for dead. It was here that she had her first encounter with the gods. As she toiled and fought to stay alive, she saw fire in the water of the river, a sign from Agraful himself, god of the struggle in this world. After this event, Last found she could channel divine energy, healing her allies and curing their ailments. She could also call upon nature, temporarily growing larger, stronger, and more resilient, like a great bear or boar. Again, this is the shifter thing tied into it. Not all were welcoming of her gifts, however. The clan leaders grew jealous, claiming she was cursed and exiled her. She wandered south, finding no home in the harsh landscape of Provincia, until she happened upon Teros the Grifter and Egwig of Latrix, and then joined forces with them. And that's how they came to be. Lady Kilala, I can't do it. Kilala, there we go. The character I'm playing right now is a Tabaxi druid with a custom subclass. Ooh, great fun. I have seen Tabaxi druids before. Tabaxi are just a lot of fun anyway. I always think of the Khajiit from Skyrim. In fact, that's how I voice them sometimes when I want to play one of those characters. It's a lot of fun doing it that way. And in another game that's not online, I do play a Tabaxi in that, a Tabaxi Bard, which has been a lot of fun, except for he died and then got brought back using the Druid spell. What was it? I've blanked. Reincarnation. Used reincarnation, and he's come back as a dragonborn. So it's just the complete opposite, like gone from fur to scales. And definitely there's been some post-traumatic stress from that for him. It's been fun to play that out. You can call me Milady or Key. Okay, Milady, I will bear that in mind. But yeah, Tabaxi are a lot of fun to play. I love their little racial traits, like being able to essentially double your speed for a turn and then just have to stop moving for a turn to recharge it. kind of just like a cat in that respect. Also the extra proficiencies and so on. And the climbing speed, and you've got the claws that you can use. I can see a Tabaxi Druid being a lot of fun because you already feel quite animalistic, and then you can transform into any animal you want. So, wow, all the things. As I said, going back to those characters then, the three of them, so I've built up, I've written little backstories for all of them, and it's sad, that they're all dead. However, I knew the risk going into it. I knew that was going to be a case. It's my first time playing a Tabaxi. It's awesome. It is. Enjoy. On the one hand, it was gutting, but I knew what I was getting myself into, and I knew I wasn't going to try and cheat the party and, have them not die. Sure, they were going to try and get out of that, but if they get killed, they get killed. That is how it is. That is the life of a mercenary. And as I said, it means that they'll have some impact going forward in the game as well, particularly when it comes to the gods. I mean, being a paladin of Agrafall, one of the gods we haven't really touched on much in the campaign is definitely going to be surfacing their head at some point. It seems the party are more interested, or been contacted more, should I say, through Festir, the god he's of the life domain. He is the god of plenty. That's it. And Ominak, god of truth. Ominak, otherwise going by the alias Keith, which he has chosen Brina and Fleeting Look as two of his agents, and Festir going by the pseudonym Steve, although Malar addresses him as Festir and has chosen him as his particular deity of choice. So it'd be interesting to hear more about the gods, because there's 8 of them, the 8. And we've had 2 of them that have had a lot of spotlight, but a third is starting to surface now. So we've now got this kind of cliffhanger of a sort ending, because the party had to get Malar, who had been stunned by these snake bites. They had to rouse him to then get him to use the diamond he was given earlier and cast Revivify on Fleeting Look, and do it within a minute of Fleeting dying, or he's not coming back. That's the dilemma. And so with these snakes, as I said, they were a homebrew creation, and I sort of jazzed up a traditional snake, and I said the Ghost of Saltmarsh snake. In fact, I'll bring up the sheet for it now. But by instead of regular venom that just poisons you, or it gives your character the poisoned condition, I also sort of tried something out by having the character also have to roll a save, and if they failed, then they would contract short-term madness, because snake bites can make you go a bit whoop up in the old noggin. The venom can do strange things to you, and I thought that would be a really cool idea. The giant coral snake is what I kind of borrowed from for the giant snake, where it's I completely borrowed it from there, because the target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or be stunned until the end of its next turn. On a failed save, the target begins to hallucinate and is afflicted with a short-term madness effect, determined randomly or by the DM. See Madness. The effect lasts 10 minutes. So I kind of riffed on that. I got rid of the stunned bit because I thought that was a bit harsh, and instead just went with rolling if they failed the save, which didn't have a particularly high DC, and an even lower one for the swarm of snakes, swarm of these these lurker snakes. It was DC 10, very low, but they would suffer from a short-term madness effect, and it just so happened the madness effect that was rolled was to be stunned, and I rolled for the amount of time, and it was going to be for 2 minutes, which would be too much. That would be too long, and then Fleeting Look would not be saved. So the party had to act quickly when they found Malar in this state. And Brina prayed to the gods, prayed to Keith, to Walminac, who then kind of gave her a reassuring pep talk and said, people got to die sometime. This is why I chose more than one person as an agent of mine. And Brina pleaded that we could save him. And so Keith pointed them in the direction of these potions which Neris had picked up from the corpses of the 3 mercenaries. Oh God! Pointed them in direction of those potions. Said, one of those is a potion of lesser restoration. Use that, and that should bring him back. If you want to bring back your friend, you need to be quick. So they did that as quick as they could. Also burned a root in the plant growth area so that Leobrin could roll on through with his cart with the dead fleeting upon it, and get him over, deliver him to Malar so that Malar can cast the spell before time runs out. Now, I think if I was being very stringent by the rules, then they definitely took more than a minute, and Fleeting Look would be dead. However, the rules are not prescriptive. The rules are not exhaustive in Dungeons and Dragons, and I think people can get far too hung up on exactly what the rules say. At the end of the day, this is more about storytelling. It's more about the journey. It's more about this collaborative effort, this collaborative storytelling between yourself and your players, than it is about the rules themselves. Yes, I think the rules should be there, but I don't think that they need to be obeyed rigorously and at all times. And bear in mind also that there are a lot of eventualities. There are so many eventualities which are not legislated for. They are not written down in the rules. There are so many rules, but not everything is covered by rules. And so I on the one hand, I can be a bit of a rules lawyer myself when the opportunity demands it. Like if you just said, as you said, amen, rules lawyer players are annoying. Well, they can be. I think they serve a purpose, however, and I think sometimes you do need somebody to go, well, hang on a minute, I think this is the rules, because you want to make sure that everyone's playing the same way every time and things, just to make everything fair in that sense. And like, there are some basic rules which we will all adhere to and obey, like rolling for initiative, like your bonuses for your how your character sheet works, for instance. We all subscribe to, this is how the character sheet works, this is where you put your stats. Like, we get that. That's with beyond question. But there are always eventualities, there are always situations in games which are going to require either improvisation or something that hasn't been covered before. And one of the difficulties I found with when you homebrew something is that because it was created by you and your DMing, if anyone has an issue with it, it's on you. There's no one else that you can defer to. There's nobody else to blame. Everything's back at you. And that's why I say that you need to have a bit of a thick skin as a DM, because there are going to be times where, either something you've made wasn't quite right, or that or your players are frustrated, not because you've done anything wrong, but because it was hard or something happens which they didn't want to happen. They can be frustrated. That happens sometimes. Heroes need to be challenged. Heroes need to have times when they lose and where things don't go to plan. They can't just win all the time. There's nothing fun about that. There's nothing interesting about that. But yeah, it does mean that the flack definitely comes your way, and it's hard not to be totally. It's hard to be totally detached from your creation, because as I said before, like, your creation is your baby. Without it, it wouldn't exist. It's become from you. I put a lot of me, not just my time, but a lot of my emotion, a lot of my soul into writing and into coming up with campaign ideas and into the characters. I mean, like these 2 sides of A4 sheets about one character that then died. I put a lot of time into this thing, and so it can. Although I always ask for feedback from the players, I think it's important to know when things have worked and when things aren't. Sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming, particularly if you're kind of rained on with a few different things that were wrong. This was wrong. I didn't like this. I didn't like that. I think that was overpowered. Like, one after the other like that, it gets to you. It really does. I think it's, as much as anything else, it can make you feel a bit like an island, because you're the DM. There's only one of you, and there are 5 or 6 players at your table who are all saying different things and all unhappy, but all unhappy about certain things.
and it can weigh you down. And I've found that quite challenging. And that's one of the things that's it's on days like that I go, oh, why am I doing this? Like, why am I putting myself through this? And I enjoy this so much, so I'm not going to give up on it. But I think it's important to acknowledge there are times where it can be quite tough, and you just got to tough it out to an extent. But also, don't let it get too much. And if it does get too much, something needs to give, something needs to change, and it's important to put your foot down, but also discuss that with your players, because there should be an agreed etiquette at the table. And nobody wants, we're all here to have fun. You don't want anyone getting hurt or anyone feeling like crap. You don't want anyone spending days after a game wallowing. Like, that's just not right. And if that's the case, something needs to change. Anyway, moving on. Lady Kilala says, what's your favorite class/race to play? Now, I can't tell you categorically because I haven't played every race and I haven't played every class. That sounds like a smart-ass answer. But out of the ones I've played so far, bucking the trend here, my favourite class to play is, I think the Ranger's great. I absolutely love the Ranger. It's the first class I played in a long-term campaign, and I think it gets a lot of flack. It's an underdog, and I like underdogs. And I think they get some of the best spells in the game. I think that they're even playing the Hunter Ranger was just a lot of fun. I played a Beastmaster Ranger at level 5, and it wasn't broken. It was fine. Like, I get from a min-maxing, optimizing standpoint that it's not ideal. But actually, the Beastmaster was a lot of fun to play, and I had this Triton Ranger with his pet, which was a giant frog. And the giant frog was amazing. I could just send in the giant... Okay, it didn't have the most hit points in the world, but you could send it in. It could latch on... Its bite attack meant it automatically grappled a target as well. So it could just hop in there, bite somebody, lock them down, and then just have them grappled, which then makes it easier for everyone else to then hit them. And equally, as I said, the spells, the Ranger gets some of the best frickin' spells, especially with Xanathar's Guide being released. Zephyr Strike is a great spell. Obviously, Hunter's Mark is a given, and it's so much so that they've basically made it into features in some of the Ranger subclasses in Xanathar's Guide. But in addition to that, you've got some of the great Druid spells in there as well. Pass Without Trace. I think Spike Growth is a Ranger spell as well. And Entangle, really, I know you can't use Entangle. Ensnaring Strike, that's what I meant. Ensnaring Strike can be really useful. I've played the Ranger 3 times now, 3 or 4 different characters who have been Rangers, so they're definitely my favourite. But that's not to say that the other classes aren't great as well. I've really been enjoying playing a 4 Elements Monk, again, one given a bit of flack, which I have kind of defended. If you go and tune in to our YouTube channel, there's the Don't Believe the Hype series, 2 videos so far, one on the Ranger, one on the 4 Elements Monk, and basically saying, don't believe the hype, they're not as bad as people make them out to be, they're actually pretty good, and giving some nuance to that as well, going, here's things that could be improved, but for the most part, I think they're pretty solid. And one last one, I like going against type, and I've done so in the Cage campaign, also on YouTube. Shameless plug. Go and check that out if you haven't done so already. In the Cage, there we go, it's right there. I play an Air Genasi wizard, a conjuration wizard, who's also a street performer. He's got the entertainer background, and it's just so much fun. He's really annoying to the party, but it's so much fun to play. And wizards, man, the spells, the spell choices. When he gets to level, I'm excited when he gets to level 3 because I get to choose 2 more spells, and I've already got a couple of them figured out, and I think, they're going to be so good. It's a lot of fun to play, and that's just talking about spells. I mean, just from a character role playing standpoint, I'm all about the role play, right? I feel like I lean into. I'm good with playing bards because of the charisma stuff and the flirtiness, and I always bring the flirtiness to the table with some of these characters, and just being able to hold a conversation and be the face. I feel like that's quite an easy fit for me, and sometimes I try and go against that. And so having a wizard that's also an entertainer meant he was kind of being a face, but also means he can break off from the stereotype and be more about magic and spell books and sorry, not magic. Bards can do magic, obviously, but less about the instruments and more about the performative side of magic. And it is, it's a lot of fun. Carapticus, the Air Genasi wizard, I'm sure the other players will agree, is a hoot. I mean, annoying as anything, but just the best. A lot of fun to play him. So, yeah, if you haven't done so already, go and check out The Cage on YouTube. Our next episode will be dropping next week, this time next week, actually, Friday, on our YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to YouTube already, to our YouTube channel, make sure you do so. There's a link for it just down from the video if you're watching us live on Twitch. So make sure you subscribe. And if you're watching us on YouTube, I think there's a button just below the video as well. So click that as well. Anyway, that's probably enough plugging for today. Probably enough, actually, on the campaign diary. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for your questions as well, guys. I'll be back with another one of these in a couple of weeks, I hope. But come join us on Monday for the next session to see, is Fleeting Look alive? Is he dead? What's going on? Will the gods intervene? What's happening? And also, there was a fate dice rolled on the Halloween special. What happened with that? There was a meteor mentioned. It crashed into a mountain. What happens there? Find out, possibly, on Monday at 6 p.m. here live on Twitch. Join me then. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great weekend. And of course, as usual, stay safe.